So let's have a fairly detailed overview of just some of the features in Corona for Cinema 4D Alpha 6 release candidate 1. It's due out in about a week as I record, but I'm using a daily build, so there may be some changes between now and the release of release candidate 1. But it should be enough to give you a guide as to some of the features you can expect to see in there. And I'm using a free scene here from /cube. It's downloadable off the web. A great way to take a look at setting things up, and a great way to experiment with Corona for C4D and learn some of the features. So let's dive on in. So let me just go ahead and start this rendering in the picture viewer, and I'm also going to open up the Corona VFB as that renders. And what you'll just see is that they're both in sync, and this is what we've been focused on for Alpha 6, making sure that the two options are fully compatible, so you can choose whichever one you prefer to work in. The Corona VFB has all these settings here built in. If you want to see those here in the picture viewer, you simply open the color mapping tab. You'll see that these match between the two, and if you adjust one, and you can adjust these while rendering, you'll see that they both adjust. And that sort of integration was very important to us. I'm actually going to close out the picture viewer and just use the VFB, the Corona VFB. Okay, and the render has completed. I'm going to start by looking at the denoise amount, and what this value does, this is the one value you have to wait for rendering to finish to adjust, because denoising happens at the end, and I can scroll this down to 0 and it'll show you the original image. This is the original result of 10 passes, and you can see the noise is still present, and if I raise this up, I'm blending in the denoised result, and I end up with a very nice image. Recommended values are usually between 0.5 and 0.6. This scene I haven't really rendered enough passes for those values to work, and I think it looks perfectly fine at 1. But for some scenes, if you have noise or very fine detail in a texture, such as wood grain or a bump on a carpet, the value of 1 may soften those too much. And if that's the case, a value of 0.6 usually works very well at retaining any small details in texture maps, but giving a very clean image. In this case, I don't think the image softens up at all with the full denoise, so I'm going to stay with that for the rest of the demo. So we already had a look at exposure. It does exactly as you'd expect, and all of these values can be adjusted during the render as well as afterward. Highlight compression will compress the highlights. If I bring this down, reduce the compression, you'll see the highlights get brighter and brighter. Push it back up, you'll see that those get more restrained. White balance, as you'd expect, makes an image warmer or cooler. Contrast, again, as you'd expect, this works very much like the contrast in Photoshop. It's a slight change to the contrast functionality in 1.5, made its way over to Alpha 6 and C4D. Saturation, also as you'd expect. Filmic highlights gives a filmic type look to the highlights. If I push that up, maybe I need to zoom in some more, you'll see the change. It's not dramatic, but it is there. So, and filmic shadows is the same, but for shadows. And I usually quite like a high filmic shadows value, but it depends on the look you're going for. Vignette, just as you'd expect, adds a vignette around the edge of the image. We've kept this subtle and realistic. If you want some more extreme, you'll post-process it, but we want everything to remain pretty much photographic. Color tint, we can use the temperature to make it warmer or colder, or of course we can go ahead and tint it to any color we like. These are some of my favorite features, the new bloom and glare. Let me push the bloom up, and as I do, this is like a soft glow around bright points in the image, and you'll see the glow appear around this bright spot on the lamp. Now if I keep pushing, and basically more and more bloom effect is applied. Now I can control this with the threshold. It affects both bloom and glow. As I raise it, then a point has to be brighter in order to generate the bloom processing. And of course, if I lower it, then the bloom has an even broader effect across the image. The glare power, let me just take the bloom off, set that to 0, and if I raise up the glare, this is basically the small focused glow with rays, giving you like a star effect around bright points. And I can adjust the ray count, I can adjust the ray angle to rotate it, and I can adjust the ray blur to soften it. Now let me just push this up to something extreme for a moment. I want to show you the hue shift. So we have two values here, hue power and hue shift. If I raise this up, basically it's going to replace the color from the image with like a rainbow effect, as we can see here. And the shift will change what colors are used in that as I cycle through. And I've exaggerated it here so you can see the effect clearly. Normally you'll want to dial the hue power back. I think that looks pretty good. So those are the new bloom and glare features. And of course, if I pop open the picture viewer, you'll see it's all kept in sync. If I open up the color mapping, you'll see it's all kept in sync. And of course, I can adjust any of these values in either location, and they will update in both the Corona VFB and the native picture viewer. And that's a quick introduction to those features. Okay, let's take a look at the LightMix. This is a very cool feature that lets you adjust the color and intensity of lights. I'm in the same scene. What I've done is remove the sun and the sky. Those currently are not working in the daily build in the LightMix, so I've left just the 4 lights that run along the windows here, and I'll show you how to set up the LightMix. We need to head into Corona, open the multipass, and we need to enable it. We need to add one LightMix element. Every scene that uses LightMix needs one. It has no parameters, nothing it needs adjusting. And then we need one light select for every light or group of lights that we want to affect. So I'm going to add 3, and then we add the lights to each one. I'm going to add light 3 to this one, and I'm just going to name it 3 so I know which light's in it. I'm going to add 2 to this one, and I'll name that 2. And then the last one I'm actually going to add 2 lights to, just to show you how it works with groups. There we go. And I'll just call this light select group. With that done, I can now go ahead and start the rendering. And one of the great things about LightMix is you can actually adjust it while it's rendering. You don't need to wait for the rendering to complete in order to start experimenting and changing it. So if I head into the LightMix tab here, you'll see I now have one control for each of the 3 groups, and I can adjust the intensity, either raise it or lower it. And with the light set group, I'm affecting 2 lights at once. And of course, as well as that, I can adjust the color. I can use temperature to adjust the warmth, or indeed I can adjust the color any way I like. So let's make this room a rather unusual lighting setup, just to see exactly how it's all working. And let's bump the intensity of this one up. So now you can see that I don't need to wait for the render to complete. Again, there'll be a full tutorial later. This is just a quick demo for just now. We have a couple of very handy options. Reset to 1. We'll reset everything back to the default, and reset to 0. We'll set them all to 0, which is useful if you are actually only planning on using one light in the scene. You can just turn all the others off automatically. And that's a quick guide to LightMix. Expect a full tutorial later on, but this will let you know what to expect in Alpha 6 release candidate 1. So here we are with the scene, reset back to the defaults and re-rendered. Still just 10 passes with denoising, so it comes in at about 50 seconds. And I'm going to show you the history feature. Let me just clear these previous ones. Okay, so I'm going to save this image. And now what I'm going to do is change the intensity of the sun and change the intensity of the sky, and I'm going to re-render. And basically, by using an A-B comparison from the history, we're able to see exactly what our changes have done to a scene. And this is true if you change a material, or if you change light intensity or color or move an object around. You can do the A-B comparison to see what difference that makes. And as you can see, it's not necessarily clear as the image renders exactly what's changed, and that's why an A-B comparison is useful. We can save as many of these snapshots as we like. We can save them at any point. I can save one just now while it's rendering. I'm able to save them from the Interactive renderer too. But let me just delete this most recent one and wait for this to complete. And you can save any snapshot to disk. You can resume rendering from a particular snapshot, as well as of course erase it. Okay, so let's save it. And now we can see pretty clearly what the difference is. But let's left click on this one, right click on this one, and now we get our A-B comparison that lets us see exactly what the results of our changes to the scene have done to the render. It's a great way for choosing between a couple of options where you're not sure which one looks best. So a very useful feature indeed. I can clear the ABs once I'm done, and I can add as many of these as I like, and of course I can delete them all. Okay, so that was the look at Corona for Cinema 4D Alpha 6 release candidate 1. Though I've been using the daily build to record this, but this is what you should see in RC1, due out on November the 1st. What we want to do is give that some time to be tested by users out in the field, get any feedback, make any necessary changes, and then we'll release a full version of A6. We expect that to take 2-3 weeks or thereabouts. And then after that we'll move on to Alpha 7. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.